Since 1992, some of the finest players in the world have graced the Premier League. In fact, 60% of the Premier League is currently made up of foreign players. But just who is the greatest ever overseas import? So to help us make our decision, we have no shortage of expertise. Alan Shearer, record Premier League goal scorer. Ruud Gullit, former midfielder with Chelsea and of course on the list as well. Chris Sutton, Premier League winner with Blackburn Rovers, and Rory Smith of the New York Times. OK, shall we begin in earnest and start with our number one? I'm sure you've all got in your minds who you think is the number one. Who do you want to start with, Alan Shearer?
Peter Schmeichel.
Yeah.
I played against him numerous times. Hard, the way he bullied and organised his defenders, and having talked to Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister, who played in front of him, they said he was pretty horrible as well, but had huge respect for him in a good way, because he was all of those things and he was excellent at all of those things. And you knew that you were going into battle when you went up against Peter, and he certainly wasn't afraid.
We could have picked quite a few foreign Manchester United goalies, but it's quite interesting that they went early down that route, Chris. Obviously, Edwin van der Sar.
Yeah, I have to say I think this category is the easiest one, because I think Schmeichel's head and shoulders above the rest. I think that we're all going to agree on this one in terms of...
it's not like Chris to have a strident opinion, is it?
But he was a little bit unorthodox, actually changed goalkeeping. He's more of a sort of handball keeper when he first came over. Very unusual, but a really imposing presence. And at the start of the era of the Manchester United team, which then went on to great things, and a lot of that was down to his influence. OK,
I'm trying to create some debate here. David De Gea, is it just that he's not done enough yet?
I think that Schmeichel was a complete package.
That's a no, then?
That's a no. I think Schmeichel was a complete package. As his presence was there all the time, played against him. If you talk also about Van der Sar, he was very good with his feet. That was also different in those days.
It's become a prerequisite now, hasn't it?
It's now very important for a goalkeeper that he can play football.
That's the one thing Schmeichel probably didn't have.
We're finding a chink in his armour.
But it was a different time. You didn't ask for that of goalkeepers then, did you? It wasn't. We didn't have this idea that goalkeepers should be part of the build-up play. Schmeichel's job was to rush out and terrify opposition strikers, and he did that quite well.
Well, you look at Van der Sar, more appearances, more clean sheets, better clean sheet percentage record than Peter Schmeichel. 4 titles. And yet we've hardly mentioned him.
Petr Cech does deserve a mention, though, because he was an underestimated member of that Chelsea team that set records in the mid-2000s. And then to go on and have a decent career with Arsenal after that, his longevity is extraordinary. The number of titles, he's won 4 titles, most clean sheets in a season. He's up there, Petr Cech. He'd probably have to be second.
He was very dependable, wasn't he? Very calm, Petr Cech. Different type of character, though.
No mention for the Americans, Friedel and Howard?
No.
Good goalkeepers, but I don't think you'd find many people arguing that you couldn't put them in the same bracket as...
World Cup winner Fabian Barthez?
Yeah, I know, but it's a Premier League, isn't it? So
always had a mistake in him, Fabian Barthez. That sense of dependability with Schmeichel. With Barthez, you never quite felt that. You always thought, great goalkeeper, but there is a possibility. There's going to be a moment where he makes a mistake. That was the thing with Barthez.
I don't think there's too much of a debate there then. Your number one seems to be Peter Schmeichel. I'm going to ask, of course, for your ultimate vote at the end. Let's move on then to defenders. So, defenders. Go on, Chris. Throw your grenade in.
I'm still looking for Virgil van Dijk in there.
Not yet.
Not yet. He is not made yet a PFA Team of the Year.
I think this is a very tough one, actually. If you're asking me who I would like to play against least, it would be Jaap Stam, because I think he had absolutely everything in terms of he could play, he could head the ball, he was a good defender, and he was quick.
I would have to agree that he was very tough. You knew exactly what you were going up against. You could do a bit of everything, actually. If you wanted to have a scrap and a fight with him, he wouldn't mind that. And if you wanted to play football, he was very good at that also.
Quiet for a Dutchman as well.
Is that so?
What about Nemanja Vidic? Does he get a look in for you?
I had to make a choice also. I was in between also Jaap Stam, Evra also, and Vidic. And if you see how many titles Vidic won, 5. that stands out, not so much because he's better than Stam, but only because the appearances that he had with Man United and the titles.
Vidic's career was incredible, but Jaap Stam was possibly the first truly world-class player to arrive in England at his peak. Jaap Stam was the best defender in the world when he came and was extraordinary for Manchester United for that very brief period where he didn't like the Neville brothers and then upset Fergie and then he left. And
Fergie regretted it.
Fergie is in one
For
of his
that reason,
autobiographies.
he should get in alone.
But Fergie put it down as one of his greatest regrets, selling Stam to Lazio. The other name that's missing because of the criteria, which I'm astonished by, is Ricardo Carvalho, who was just as important to that first Mourinho team at Chelsea as John Terry.
What about Ivanovic? You could make a case in terms of what he's won, an influence on the team, you know, Champions League as well, Europa League, could play a number of positions and play them well. And he was an all-rounder.
Is there any case for Vincent Kompany?
There's definitely a case for him, yeah. 3 titles. He struggled so much with injuries as well, which has been unfortunate for him. But he's a fantastic player.
I think he was not as good on the ball as the others. He could make mistakes when he wanted to dribble in and whatever. He was a little bit of hesitation in it. That makes him different. I think he was better when he was concentrated on the opposition, trying to nick balls of them.
Symbolic of a club, I think that's really important. When you take away the pure on-pitch achievements, the raw numbers, Kompany arrived at City before the money kicked in. He was a Thaksin Shinawatra signing, and he's been there throughout Manchester City's growth into the kind of preeminent force in the Premier League. To have survived all those different managers, all those different styles, that's testament to his ability. So,
especially with Pep.
Especially with Pep, yeah.
Do you like him? Would he have scared you?
Well, I do, yeah. Well, anybody scares me, Gabby. Do I like him? Of course, but would I put him up there with your Vidic and your Stams? No, I wouldn't, but a fantastic leader.
Does the fact that Sami Hyypiä hasn't won a title mean that he can't be seen as the greatest?
Yeah, I think when you put Sami up alongside Vidic and Kompany, as good as a player he was, then without doubt I think that doesn't help him.
What was he like to play against?
Very honest. Perhaps wouldn't kick you as much as the others would, but when I compare him with Vidic and Jaap Stam, yes, a very good player, but those guys were horrible to play against. That's why those 2, I think, would be at the top of my list, in Vidic and Stam.
William Gallas, part of that great Arsenal team. He obviously had a relatively successful time at Chelsea, won 2 titles. He was quick, he was great on the ball, maybe a little bit more of a playmaker.
Arsene Wenger said the best at the time, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And there was
I
think we remember Dallas maybe a little bit more for the meltdown on the pitch at Birmingham than we should, but he was a great player while he was concentrating.
He wasn't as imposing, though,
no.
Was he? I mean, Vidic actually ended my career, elbowed me in the head as my last ever game.
That's it then, isn't it?
As much as I wouldn't want to put him in, I think it has to be Vidic. And also that partnership with Ferdinand was, you know, I mean, that was one of the great partnerships of the Premier League.
So we're kind of stuck between these 2, I think, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think this is a really tough one. I'm going to go with Vidic, yeah.
Right.
I think he was a warrior and a very good one at that.
2 for Vidic.
I'm going to say Stam, because sometimes it's nice to imagine what might have been.
Vidic. Even though, yes, Stam for me is the ultimate defender, but because of the lack of games that he played for Man United, I have to choose for Vidic because 5 titles.
Yeah.
That sums it up.
The Nemanja Vidic it is then.